प्रोफेशनल पायलट भाई गया भाई एकदम बीच में, प्रेम बीच में।
Hi there, it's me Priyam, and today I'm going to show you how you can build this 5-inch Freestyle FPV quad. So before starting the build process, I'm going to show you what components I'm using for this build. So let's get started. Alright, so here are all the components for the build. I'm using the Geprc Mark 5 as the frame. It's a square 6 frame and the performance is really good. For the motors, I'm using Sparkhobby 2207.5 1700 kV motors for extreme performance. For the stack, I'm using Speedybee F405 V4 for my previous Mark 4 build. Even though this stack is not very performance oriented, but it's gonna do the work at budget. For the FPV camera, I'm using Runcam Robin 3. I was not very sure with the performance of this camera cause the price was very cheap, but the build quality and the image quality looks pretty clean to me. Initially for the VTX I was using Speedyee Tx800, but this VTX is literally the reason why my drone crashed in the water more than twice. This VTX is not recommended at all. After all the crashes, I actually swiped the VTX with a slightly better option. For the FPV antenna, I'm using Foxeer Pogoda, and for the receiver, I'm using Axis Flying ELRS Nano receiver. And to watch the live FPV footage, I'm using Skyzone Sky 040 Pro FPV goggles. It's the best in the market. The performance is really good. For the radio link, I am using Radio Master ELRS Micro TX module with my TX12 transmitter. You can use any radio link as long as it has enough range for a suitable use case. I am not showing the assembling process for the frame as there are many tutorials available online. You can just search up and you will definitely find something that will help you around. Alright, now let's start the build by mounting the ESC to the frame. And now I am soldering the capacitor to the ESC. And for the XT60 connector, I have already measured and cut it to the right length. While soldering the XT60 connectors to the ESC, it might take a lot of heat from your solder iron, so keep that in mind. The solder joints look super shiny, and now it's time to install the motors. While mounting the motors, always remember to use suitable length of screws so you don't accidentally touch the motor windings with the screws. But if you can't find suitable length of screws or you somehow lost some of the screws that are included with the motors or the frame, then you can go to OnlyScrews website where they sell all the types of screws, bolts, nuts and everything you will ever need to finish your FPV quad. You can even order one single screw from their website, and not just that, they have a large variety of products, so definitely check that out. The link is in the description, and don't forget to use the code 777LIGHT10 for 10% discounts on your orders. Alright, I have mounted all the 4 motors to the frame. Now it's time I install these motor wire shields for the extra protection. And now it's time I solder the motor wires to the frame. Before soldering, measure the motor wires and cut it at the right length, not too short, not too long. While soldering, I am keeping my solder iron temperature to 480 degrees Celsius. If you don't know how to solder, there are many tutorials on YouTube. You should check them out, it will definitely help you. Alright, the solder joints turned out to be pretty clean. Now it's finally time to install the flight controller and the rest of the components. Let's start by installing the camera. And to mount the VTX, I use some zip ties, as I was already planning to upgrade the VTX as soon as possible. And now it's time to mount the receiver. And don't forget to connect the antenna adapters and the antennas to the receiver and the VTX. Now let's solder the VTX and the rest of the electronics to the flight controller. And don't forget to tin the pads before soldering. The VTX comes with a plug and solder pads, but I honestly prefer to solder the VTX directly to the flight controller instead of using a plug. And if you want to use the plug, you can, but always remember to keep the wires twisted and as short as possible to reduce the electronic noise. And to solder everything, I am following the flight controller wiring diagram that comes with the stack itself. Alright, I have finished soldering everything to the flight controller. Now I'm gonna put a heat shrink on the receiver. The build is almost finished, but before powering up the quad, always remember to install the antenna. And I'm using this smoke stopper as this lets you know if you made any mistakes while soldering. Alright, everything looks fine. Now let's install the VTX side guards, and I have already programmed the quad, so now we can install the top plates. I didn't include the programming part, but if you guys want it, just let me know in the comments and I will make a separate video on it. And after installing the top plate and the camera mount, it's finally ready for the test flight. For the battery, I am using CHNL Black 1300 mAh 6S LiPo cell. And for the charger, I am using SkyRC B6 Neo. And for the props, I am using T-Motor Tri-Blade 5-inch propeller set. Alright, now the build is finished and we can finally go outside for a test flight. But before going for the test flight, I wanna invite you to my Instagram, where I upload more FPV content and more short form related content. So make sure to follow me on Instagram, the link is in the bio.